Live streaming is on.
So for the scope and the goals of the methodology team, what we've gone over so far is the training and understanding about the methodology. Session happens every quarter, moons each quarter, Wednesday, Andromeda hour 3. We evaluate our methods and improve and getting agreement on changes. The methodologies are foundational core, our operating system, and it should be functional today and in 200 plus years from now. Otherwise, it's just not methodology. It's interorganizational, multi-strategic, holographic, applies to the larger context, the entire network, and the entire vortex. So it's very, very broad. Another goal would be that basically we want to organize, clarify, and present our methodologies for future generations to utilize. So for me, one of the methodology P team, like if everything else falls apart across the entire network, methodology P team is the only team that would have the scope to actually organize all the methods, package them, and present them to future generations, even if the current generation is just not interested.
Yeah.
Right. So this is where all that would happen. And for me, that is like one of the most important things that we could do, because there's no guarantee we're going to be successful. And it could take multiple generations to really improve our situation as, for what we're trying to do. And so this is like a really important component of that. And whatever we do want to present to future generations needs to be, accessible in 1,000 years, right? So that it can't just be like a website, because a website is like you have to pay every year, right? So it's like, what can you create that'll be around in 1,000 years that's publicly accessible? And there's already models and technologies for that, so it's pretty exciting. So I think this kind of outlines our primary scope and goals for the methods P team.
Time to pause.
5-second pause. Can anyone think of anything else that is applicable to the methods P team? Otherwise, I was going to go kind of start with the components of the methodology, and then from that we can start prioritizing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if that is the scope and goals for the methodology, but I mean something that the method we want to build the method that we talked about is that there should be like compartments. Like each method should be its own compartment that can be scalable, and
so they
can be put together.
Yeah, that's called modularization. So, to modularize and organize methodology to be interoperable and multi-faceted, right? And this also can be incorporated into technology and code, etc. So anyways, there's no question that modularization is a core value that we have in all of our methods, to modularize our methods, so that nobody has to apply all of the methodology all the time. You can simply apply one single method in one module to what you're doing, and you're fine. You don't have to know or do everything, because that is just not applicable. It's not necessary. And also, in any particular situation, let's say you have 10 different module method systems, right? In any particular situation, you don't necessarily need to use those in the exact way that they've been used in the past. You could have 10 different modules, and you could recombine them in a completely different way, for the current problem solving that you're addressing in the current situation.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's getting into the actual methods themselves. That's not technically the overall scope.
Okay.
Cool. So, because modularization is not required. Does that make sense?
It's not required.
Yeah. Because if somebody wants to use the methods in a very specific way, they can do that too, right? And you can combine and interconnect it all together to be one big, huge thing. That's perfectly fine as well. But anyways, we like to make it as flexible as possible. And the way we make it as flexible as possible would be modularization. So flexible.
Dynamic modular model of method. Very good.
All right, so
Time for breath.
let's do the breath. Anyone want to do the breath?
Yeah, here. Inhale. Exhale. Let's inhale together. Exhale.
Okay.
Relax.
Nice. Okay, so we're gonna go through some of the components of the methodology. And anytime if anyone can think of any other scopes or goals, just throw it out there. But this is all pretty new stuff, so we're not really expecting people to know all the details. So the most obvious thing about the methodology is our work methods. I'm gonna give an example of our work methods.
The trajectories, the trajectory model. No. I don't know. Our
the trajectory model can be applicable, but technically speaking, the trajectory is not the model. The methodology is the vortex model, right?
Okay.
So technically, trajectories are embedded in a component of the vortex model, right? And that is a little bit more applicable to our structure and our sort of overall things, but how do we utilize the vortex model in the trajectories with our work?
Through the management model.
Okay, but what do we do? Okay, so I'll give you an example, right?
Yeah.
So an example would be our organizing methods, right? Our work organizing methods. So we call it work organizing, and we have responsibility organizing. We've got position organizing. We've got, process organizing. But what is the method behind that? Why do we do that? Like, what is it that makes work organizing, responsibility organizing, all of that possible? What is it? Because we can say work organizing, we can say responsibility organizing, but that's not really, that's just a vocabulary term. What is actually the method behind responsibility organizing?
Time to pause.
5-second pause.
It's the policies that make up our educational infrastructure.
No. So this is where the policies are very different from the methods, right? Policies and evaluation and issues, that's all eval team, and that's all basically like, how do you solve the problems? How do you deal with the situation? The methods, right, we're at 5, or I think this is 10 minutes actually.
Is the guiding documents.
The methods is the actual experience you go through, right? So an example of our work methods would be that every single time you do anything, you set it up. You start with the setup.
Yes.
Always start with setup, right? That would be an example of a work method. Do you see how different that is than a policy?
Yes.
Right? It's not a policy. It's a method, right? Whenever you do anything, before you do it and jump into it, you stop, you take a step back, you breathe, and you set up yourself for success. Because if you skip the setup, you're going to be a huge mess. You're going to be tripping over yourself the whole time. You're not going to get any work done. So in our work methods, you're required to set everything up, right? So in the setup of the responsibility organizing, what is the very first thing that you do in work organizing, responsibility organizing when you're setting it up?
the
Very first things you do.
the setup of the process of the system.
Yeah, but when you go into the setup, what's one of the very first things you do for work organizing, responsibility organizing, process organizing? What's the responsibility organizing? What's the very first things you do?
The process.
You get together the documents, the links
No.
to the.
No. Responsibility organizing. What is one of the very first things you do for responsibility organizing? Once it's all organized, then you go into the setup of the responsibility, and then in that you organize the documents. But I'm talking about the setup of the actual responsibility organizing itself before you even have setup step. What's one of the very first things you do for responsibility organizing? Come on. You guys know this.
It's the name of the responsibility.
Perfect. Name of the responsibility, right? The link for the responsibility, the goal of the responsibility, right? Without the name, the link, and the goal, you have nothing. Period. That's the foundation of our work methods because it applies to everything that you do. It applies to every single method, responsibility.
Time to stretch.
Every single goal, every single process, every single group, right? So what did we do today? We started with the scope and the goals. We started with the name, the methodology, team. We started with the very, very beginning. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what a method is. 30-second stretch. All right, so beyond just the work methods, we also have a broader method for our team functioning, which is what we call the problem-solving method, right? Problem-solving method. You guys understand the idea of the problem-solving method and how we apply that? I mean, it's basically the same as the work method, except it's a little bit broader, right? So our work methods and the problem-solving method is almost exactly the same. You have your start, you're setting everything up. You go into the actual work, and then you wrap it up and follow it up, and right. So there's a method of problem-solving that's almost exactly the same. Do you want me to kind of refresh that, or you guys understand what I'm saying? You want to give an example, or?
I mean, the example is the prioritization that we do with the.
Yeah. So you always start, for example, with brainstorming, right? So you set up, you understand your goals, you get everything organized, and you start with brainstorming, right? Then once you brainstorm, you prioritize. Then once you prioritize, you narrow down, right? So it's the whole process that you go through. But that process that you go through has a foundational method of why you go through that process. And the method itself builds the process, right? The process comes out of the methodology. The process doesn't exist by itself. Okay, that makes sense?
Yes.
So the problem-solving method is exactly the foundation. Okay, we are at 15 minutes now, I believe. The problem-solving method is exactly the foundation to how and why we build our decision-making methods. Okay, so our decision-making methods go through the idea that when we make decisions, we're solving problems, and so we utilize the problem-solving methodologies. But solving every problem doesn't necessarily lead to a decision. Right, you can solve a problem without needing a decision or a change in policies.
Time to pause.
5-second pause. It just depends on the situation of whether it goes into your decision making or if it's just problem solving. The problem solving will be a broader context, but we utilize the same concepts of problem solving in our decision making methods. Okay?
Okay.
Yes.
So, with that said, is there any other methods or components of our methodology that anyone wants to list or incorporate or have a question about before we get into other things here? Because these are the main ones that we use on a daily basis. we really don't use most of our methods on a daily basis. This is basically it right here. Between our work methods, our decision-making, problem solving, like we have a structure and that's it. We have the vortex model. So like that's literally pretty much 99% of what we do on a daily basis. We just repeat it over and over and over and over again. But so if there's any questions about these or you want to understand, you can ask now, or you can start listing other methodologies, which we rarely go into, but are very important and very applicable.
I mean, I'm looking here at the methodology here. I linked in line 13, methodology P-team spreadsheet.
Uh-huh.
Here we have a very big list of models, but I don't know if it's applicable. You want me to copy and paste it?
No, let's not copy and paste it yet. Let's take a look at it. What line are we looking at?
It's the tab is called models.
The tab's called models, okay.
And then line 8, there is a list of models.
Yeah, cool. So
this in yellow are the one we use the most, and then we have the other ones.
yeah, I mean, some of this is applicable, but some of it kind of like is duplicated, right? In the context. So for example, a lot of this is structural, right? And which is why I just kind of put it under structural methodology, right? So there are many different structural methods, right? Whether it's the vortex model, the trajectories, the web model, the network model, and then you have your sociocracy and your bottom-up models, all of that. So, but that is very much so related to overall structure. Then you've got a whole bunch of lists of different types of decision-making models. But I believe there are components here that are very applicable and important. And look, we even have a list of priorities for methodologies. So it's super key as well. Okay. So the answer is yes, we want to add some of those, but let's not add all of them. Let's just add the
Time for breath.
Inhale, inhale, exhale. Let's inhale together. Exhale. Relax.
Cool. Thank you. So I would just like slow down a little bit. Like we don't need to go through 100 different things right now. Let's just look at the primary categories of, anything that doesn't fit into some of these other existing categories, right? So under structural models, there could be dozens and dozens and dozens of different structural models. We don't need to go through every single one right now.
Okay.
So, but do you want to add a few things that are obviously different?
I mean, the life support, obviously.
Okay, that's great. So explain life support. Why is life support?
Well, life support is our core value, right? It's one of our core values, core vision.
Core values are a different type of method. Very important. All of our core values and understanding the differences of core values between strategies, right? Clarifying the differences of core values between strategies.
Yeah. So life support. So
about 20 minutes.
Goes back to life support. I think life support is like the basic method that we have for accomplishing the unity. The unity plan, right? So it's how we can get together as a community.
No. I mean, the bottom line, life support, it's all about everything starts with individuals, right? It's all about empowering individuals and understanding individual needs and individual, like the world will be transformed through individuals, right? In each individual and their ideas must be valued. And in some of our core models of, I'm just going to put the term here. I'm not really going into it, but basically you have, we call it decision-making infrastructure, right? I like the term decision-making Governance is another term that people use, but governance is very political, and we're trying to get away from political, right? But we'll note that a lot of people use the term governance. So we use what's called the democratic trilogy, and then we use what's called
Time to pause.
5-second pause. We use what we call multocracy. The multocracy is the holographic holographic democratic model, right? And so the multocracy is the evolution. Okay, so right now we have representative democracy, right? And we have parliamentary systems. The evolution of that is the democratic trilogy going into the multocracy, right? The holographic democratic model. The systems of democracy we have in the world today are dying. Like, they are falling apart and dying. Unless democracy evolves, democracy itself will die. There's just no possible way that it can survive what's going on in the world today, right? So in the context of understanding that in relationship to life support, one of the ideas of multocracy is ideocracy, where that beyond individual lives, every single individual and their ideas and their thoughts are essential, are empowered, and are valued intrinsically. And in that context, each person's thoughts and ideas have rights in and of themselves. So it even goes beyond just the individual lives, but everything comes out of a life, right? But then we empower and value everything that comes out of that individual life. And then the foundation and the structure of life support goes from life support of individuals and whatever that individual wants to do to make the world a better place, to buddy teams of 2 to 3 people. And our entire foundational structural system across the entire network is all based on one person building buddy teams of 2 to 3 people. Okay, and that's part of our empowerment models. Okay, but the bottom line for life support is everything starts with the individual. Without lives, without individual lives, nothing else matters.
Yeah, exactly.
If you just throw people away as if they're machines or nothing, everything else falls apart in terms of all of the rest of our values.
I mean, reality itself, it's not possible without the individual life that can they can acknowledge and that life exists. Otherwise, it's just nothing, and not even nothing would have not even meaning if there would be at least one individual life that acknowledges that there is nothing.
Because an organization is composed of individuals, right? So no organization without.
Sure, but the problem with most 99% of organizations in our society is that they disregard the individual, and it's all top down, and it's all based on the power structures of controlling individuals, right? So we are trying to create a whole new model where everything is based on a bottom-up structure, bottom-up methods of structure, where individuals working through buddy teams of 2 to 3 people have all the power, right? All the power less in individuals, not in, for example, the CEO or the board or the executives, right? Which is how most organizations function. All right, so I think we're at 20 minutes. So we do need to move on from this, but obviously this is the beginning of the very next topic. So the next topic is listing everything, and then we're going to prioritize. So I just want to cover a couple essential components that we've missed so far. But before I do that, is there anything else anyone wants to add to our list of all the different components of methodology? And we're not trying to get everything here. We're just trying to get the most important ones so we can prioritize.
I think the community equity, it's important that we include it. And that's it. For me, this is very good to start. I mean, obviously, that's kind of it's good to put it there. I mean, the unity theory itself.
All right, now we're getting somewhere. So unity theory, great. All right, that's good. So let's cover these though. So community equity. Why are we adding community equity? What is community equity? Because community equity in and of itself is actually not the method. It's just an example, right, of a model that we use. So can you explain why community equity is important and what problem it solves? Or do you want me to do that?
No, you can do it, Jay.
All right, so just quickly as
save time.
possible,
Yeah.
like the foundation of community equity is distributing value, which is why we do value distribution, right? And distributing value to all contributors. So the foundation to our own organization, which is what we are right now, this is the methodology P team of the Contributors Co-op. We are the Contributors Co-op, and everybody who participates and contributes to the co-op gets value and is valued, right? That is all done through community equity and the distribution of value and equity throughout the society or throughout the community. Societal equity is taking it up a level, right? And also, if anyone heard of basic living incomes, right? We also have basic minimum equity, right? So basic minimum income, basic minimum equity, it's all the same model and method. And really that foundation is the distribution of value to all contributors, okay? That would be the foundational method. So anyways, I could go on and on about that, but the problem it solves is that in the current model of capital-based economics, you end up with a model where less than 6 people across the world own over half of the value and the wealth of the planet, right? So community equity solves that problem by ensuring that you're always distributing value to all contributors, not just the very, very few people who have the original capital, right? Because that's always going to end with basically one person owning the majority of everything, and that's the direction we're going, which is just preposterous. So the community equity model and the value distribution based on contribution is an automatic distribution of value that nobody needs to agree to in order to get value, right? It's just automatic. So that is all I really need to say about that, and we could talk about it forever. In terms of unity theory, this is like foundational. I don't want to go into all of the basics, but there's 2 components to unity theory. The first is that if you want democracy is equal to 50% plus 1 majority of the population, right?
Yes.
In our models, our goal is much, much more than 50%. Our goal is always like 80 to 90% agreement, if not even consensus, right? We're always striving towards consensus of the entire population. But with the context of understanding unity theory of 50% plus 1, the bottom line is every single social movement in the entire planet in the world has never, ever had more than 10% of the population. Everyone understand that?
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, for example,
social movement in the world that has more than like 5 to 10% of the population. So every social movement that's been successful utilizes the concept of community theory to unify 5 to 10 movements. And when you unify 5 to 10 movements, you can get 50% plus of the total population so that you can actually have power. Without the unification of a minimum of 5 to 10 movements, there is no transformation, there's no power to actually transform anything. Right? So that's the foundation of unity theory and the foundation of the unity theory as it is applied to society and the transformation model that we're doing. So you were saying, Alberto?
yeah, no, I was curious about the one movement that actually was involved 10% of the population. If you could name one.
Well, I mean, one example would be the women's suffrage movement in the United States or other women's suffrage movements across the planet to give women the right to vote. I mean,
End of break. Time to start.
That's a huge movement.
There was a very huge movement.
Very small amount of the population, right? There was only maximum 5 to 15% of the population. I think another example would be the Trump movement that we see now in the United States and other places in the world, in Europe and everything. This current wave of not necessarily dictatorships, but basically like of oligarchies and billionaires taking over power across the world, which Trump is just one example of. That represents basically 10% of the population in the United States, right? And they're able to get so much power because they unite with other groups to function, right? So anyways, I don't want to go into all the political details of that. What I want to get into is the other component of unity theory, because there's two components of unity theory, right? One is, political and actually, dealing with decision making and power. The other is much, much more rooted in daily life. And so the old model is, in the foundation of our entire society is all based on science. We are a scientific society, and I don't want to go into details, but scientific society, this very specific of that is we are based on what's called Einsteinian relativity. Okay, so our society, the primary foundational function of our society is Einsteinian relativity, period. And we go on that forever, but it affects every single moment of every single lives. We would not be talking here without the technology developed by Einstein with the physics and all the communication technology and telecommunications across the world. We're all even communicating here right now. It only happens based on Einsteinian relativity.
Einstein.
That originated from
Yeah, all of it. So in the context of what that means, our scientific body of knowledge considers people irrelevant currently. So the current scientific theories or the current academic scientific theories that are agreed upon believe that actual human individuals are irrelevant, right? Which means that basically they can't observe. Only machines can observe, right? Human beings cannot observe, right? And the very, very simple mathematical context of it is that if you have 10 people in a room and you have 10 people all observe one experience together, and then afterwards you ask each one of them what happened, every single human being is going to present a different perspective of what happened. So
Time to pause.
So within our current scientific models, science has to disregard the human experience and can only apply what is mechanically observable, because otherwise it's not validated.
Yeah,
that's how all science is based in the whole planet, and how our entire society functions.
It needs to be replicable.
Yeah, it has to be replicable by a machine, right? It can't be replicable by a human. It has to be replicable by a machine.
Okay? Sorry, they say that's called the scientific method, right?
That's the scientific method. So the scientific method is a beautiful thing, and we love the scientific method, and we utilize the scientific method in everything that we stand for, and we support it 1,000,000%. We have no problem with the scientific method. We love it. We would not exist today without it. But we've created a new method, and the new method is called the Uniscience method. Uniscience method. So the Uniscience method is similar to the scientific method, except it's based on unity theory. And the context of unity theory is that the foundational experience of the universe is conscious, and that we as human beings have conscious experiences in our unifying with the universe, in essence, and that our experiences are actuality, and that they are real, and that they are essential and important in each individual human being, and their experience is valid, period. And so within every moment, that experience is justifiable and documentable within the uniscientific method. So the scientific method is all based on, quote, results or what they call, not a determination, but a perceived understanding, right? So if you take 100 different tests, right, and then you look at all the results of all of those tests, and then you look at our experiments, and then you kind of understand the interrelationships of all of those, that's how the scientific method works. Is that basically it's a perception of what is going on within all these tests. The Uniscience method is all about the test and the actual experience in the moment. The Uniscience method can never go beyond basically a few seconds to a few minutes, right? It has this one single moment, and in that moment, it may not ever be replicable ever again, but it's still valid. Okay, because it's whatever happens in that moment is the moment, and that moment may never happen again. The alignment of all the things to make that moment happen literally might never ever happen again in the entire existence of the universe. But it doesn't mean that it is invalid. Okay, but when you multiply,
Time for breath.
all right, let's do the breath.
You did not take a break.
Inhale,
Let's do
exhale.
Yeah.
Inhale together. Exhale, relax.
So anyways, we could go on and on and on about all this, but unity theory is very important. The scientific method is very important. The unisense method is very, very important. But the only other thing I want to make sure it's clear here is that we also structurally support what we call multi-jurisdictional structures, which includes, the U.S. Constitution, basically, modern parliamentary constitutions, and there's a couple of them. We have the Earth Charter. We have a few different versions of the Declaration of Interdependence, and then the newest one is the Declaration of Consciousness. So these declarations and these layers. The human rights. What is it called? The Declaration of Human Rights. Right. So again, we don't just blindly follow the United Nations or whatever government exists. We do follow the foundational principles of the documents that set in motion global understanding of the Earth and the Earth's value, the Declaration of Human Rights and every human's value, the understanding of interdependence, consciousness, and basic parliamentary unification, right? So we acknowledge all of that, and we accept all that, and we support all of that for the future of humanity. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's kind of the foundation to all the components. I guess the only other thing I think it's important to mention here is everything not documented, and we have to note here J. So there's things that are not documented that still need to be documented that I have and that are dependent on me, but we want them not to be, right? So that obviously is a priority, and that's part of our organizational assessment. Cool. So anyways, we're definitely over time here. We said we missed a break. So we'll take a 5-minute break, shall we? Or 2-minute break, 3-minute break?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're ready for topic 3. We actually just covered like half of topic 3 already, which is just listing all the different components. And then in the next topic, we want to prioritize them, right? And just make sure we have clarity on our priorities. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so topic 4 is decision making. So I think we're missing the tab. So let's take a 3-minute break. And when we get back, let's jump into prioritization real quick, and then we can go into decision making.
Okay.
Okay. Quick break.
3 minutes, yeah.